Welcome back, kids. Here we have the LTE 5280. It's the topic of the week, apparently. So I'll start off by saying, if you haven't watched my previous video on rebuilding the battery pack on this machine, I'll show you what the end result is. I don't think I showed that. This is how the pack came out. Now I got a lot of questions in my last live feed about this. You know, can I rebuild your battery pack? Can you rebuild my battery pack? Is the most common question I got. And the answer is really no. I'm not offering to do this for anyone but myself. But this is how it came out. I mean, it almost looks pretty good. I mean, the reality is these packs were essentially either cemented, glued, or heat sealed shut. And they were never, ever meant to be taken apart. So, some of these aftermarket packs come apart easier than the OEM ones. This one came apart pretty easily. And getting the cells packed back in there was a challenge because the cells that I bought had larger tabs than the cells that came out. That being the amount of material between the two cells when they're put together is a bit more, by about 0.5 millimeter. And so it turned out to be a little challenging to get this battery installed, not gonna lie. So, and the other critical thing I have to say is if you do rebuild your own battery pack, it is critical on certain makes and models of laptop that you have to run the calibration utility, and that is what I had to do here. Now, I ended up with another problem that was unrelated to anything power related, and I'm going to try to angle the screen to the camera so you can all see this. Now, if I put pressure or twist the screen a little bit, the image tends to flip out. And I've had this machine apart before for this reason. And I'm going to just double check my work. It seems to be, I got to figure out where there's something in I think it's somewhere in there. Something ain't right. So we're going to pull the thing apart and get a good look at what's going on. That's what this video is going to be about. So I'm going to leave the machine running while I do this so I can, oh yeah, that's right, these don't fold all the way back. Oh, well. No, I'll have to work with what I can. Alright, so let's take this little grommet off. You never want to lose these little caps because once they're gone, you'll have to buy a parts machine to get them back. You can't just go to Radio Shack or Comp USA or Kmart to buy them because none of those places are still in business. That's only part of the problem. Okay. These actually, Compaq had an affinity for Torx screws. Okay. Anyway, I decided I was going to put a bigger hard drive in this machine because I feel like it really could benefit from it. I can load a lot more stuff on it. And so I started setting out to obtain a bigger drive. Now, I don't recall exactly which version of the ROM this machine has, but I did not upgrade it to the latest version, which was released, I believe, in '97. That version of the ROM I've known for years because I used to have one of these back in the day. That version of the Compaq ROM causes a delay on a very long, lengthy delay on startup, which is crazy. And I think it had some other problems. It wasn't ready to be taken out of the oven, so to speak. Compaq really probably was more interested in making the machine seem slower, and didn't really want to help you out. As a customer, they wanted you to buy something new. So they didn't put their best foot forward, and they released a half-baked ROM upgrade. So that's a pretty well-known bug with the 5000 series. Anyone who has owned one or is in the hobby of collecting them will know this. So, let me see if I can pull this off. One thing that Compaq did right is the plastics that they used on this model were actually pretty good quality. And after all these years, the plastic is still quite malleable. And you can see it's coming apart with relative ease and without any problems. In comparison, if you take apart, say, one is shining example because it happened to me recently. Oh, you got to get these clips off without breaking, and I'm not even using a black stick, and I'm able to do this, which is. I just have to. Come on. All right, which direction are those clips? Kind of come this way. Oh, I see where the problem is. Yeah, I think I do. I just got to get this unclipped without breaking it. It's easier with the display completely removed, obviously. Let me see if I can just gently, ever so slightly, prise it apart. I think if I go like this, I can separate it from the back. But I don't want to put any marks in it. But yeah, I don't want to put any tool marks in there because this machine doesn't have any. And we want to kind of keep it that way. Yeah, there we go. Once you get it started, very easy to cause damage and break broken clips. Anyway, what I was saying was, if you take apart, say, an old Acer from the late 90s, or an Acer-produced IBM ThinkPad, you're going to find that they are, not only are they getting them apart, you are going to break something. Let's just leave it at that. Something's going to break. And, oh, there we go. Just the right touch. Trust the Midas touch, they say. So what was I saying before I continue on? I tried putting a bigger drive in this machine, and I started talking about BIOS versions. And that's important because the original BIOS would only accept a drive about 4 gigabytes in size before it said, sorry, I cannot identify this drive, please go pound sand. Whatever version of BIOS that this machine has currently, I was able to successfully install a 6 gigabyte drive. I have an extra drive can, and on the LTE 5000 series, this is the drive can that they require. Compaq spares number, oh, that's for the drive that's in it. I don't have a number for the can, but it looks like this, and you know, looks like a little black box. So anyway, I was able to put a 6 gig IDE drive in there, no problem. And let me see if I can start working this side apart without breaking it. So the drive went in just fine. I was able to, now, a couple of things. I want to keep this as a Windows 95 machine. That was my goal, and that created a new problem. Well, the thing is, hold on, let me get the rest of this off. So I got the drive installed, formatted, everything looked pretty good at first, and then it started getting ugly. Windows 9, alright, so what happens is, with FAT16, you can take your 6 gig drive, and you cannot have a partition larger than 2 gigabytes. That's where FAT32 came in. Well, the problem with that is, okay, fine, I'm limited to a basically I'm going to have, All right, we got our panel apart. So now we can talk about a couple of other topics du jour. So, FAT16, the partition limit is 2 gigabytes, which is quite limiting when you've got a modern OS like Windows 95, and you have a drive that's 6 gigabytes. So you're stuck with dividing that 6 gig drive into 3 partitions. Now what that ends up doing is, now there's another side issue, a little side problem here, and that has to do with Windows 95's installation process. Now there are many ways to install an OS, but what I chose to do, because this is what they call a 2-spindle machine. You have a spinning hard drive and either a floppy drive or a CD-ROM drive. This does not have the optional dock, and it does not have the optional external floppy drive shell. So that gave me a bit of a problem. So I couldn't boot from the Windows 95 installer floppy while the CD is installed. So what I had to do is, I believe in this case, I took the, I formatted the drive with with DOS 622 and installed the full copy of DOS 622. Now that formats the drive, of course, is FAT16. Windows 95 version B supports FAT32. That's important. Well, not really. So I got a FAT16 drive. I had to chop it up into 3 partitions. I then copied the Windows 95 install files to drive C. I ran the installer. Actually, I put it on drive F, because why not? Or drive, I was C, D, E. I put it on drive E because it was just extra space. So that was all well and good, but when I ran the installer for Windows 95, something went horribly wrong. And it started giving me these weird issues with the CD-ROM drive. Now, the CD-ROM drive in this laptop is a known good drive. It has never given me a lick of trouble. Until now. All of a sudden, it's not... what was it doing? It wasn't reading disks correctly. I had an issue where I'd put a disk in, and it would still have the previous disk's label, and it still thinks the other disk is in there, even though the files have changed. It's just all these random things, and that's just one problem. There were other issues with the video driver not working correctly. I installed some software, and it incorrectly stated that I had a 256 color display adapter, when in fact it was set to 16-bit color and displaying 16-bit color. Just all these weird things. So I'm not shelving that right now. I decided I'm shelving that right now, but I'm not gonna cancel it altogether. I'm gonna eventually try to figure out what the problem is. Okay, let's take a look at our display. So I'm noticing that there's a connector here that is not completely seated in, right there. Now what I'm going to do, I don't have a non-conductive tool. Oh wait, I do. I have some CRT alignment tools, but they're not handy right now, so that's a problem. Whatever. I have a death wish apparently. I'm going to try to push on this connector and see if my display begins to flip. Yeah, this is the problem right here. This connector is halfway out. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the connector. I'm going to shut the machine down. We're going to pull it out, and we're going to try to fix it. So let's do a shutdown. So anyway, I put the original drive back in, which is a 1.32 gigabyte drive, which is big enough for my purposes. I don't need a 6 gig drive. I just need enough space for the stuff I'm going to use this laptop for. And that's all I need, right? So this connector is the problem. Now, I thought I addressed this before. Apparently not. So let's unplug it and see what in Christ's name is going on here. We're going to unplug the connector. It is not fully seated. Just check it for any corrosion. So how's the battery holding up, you might be wondering. So far so good. After we get this fixed, I'm gonna do a quick demonstration of how the laptop suspend function works with a functioning suspend battery. Because I didn't just replace the mains battery, I replaced the suspend battery as well, which is also the clock battery. Alright, so the connector doesn't appear to be loose, but this cable right here, this has been a problem with this laptop since I got it. And I don't know why, but that connector doesn't properly seat. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a wee bit of deoxit on there, because I swear to God, if they... I would take a paid endorsement deal for that company if they offered it to me, but they probably won't. Their product works. I don't even need to be paid to tell you that it works. So we're going to put some deoxit on there. I got to go find my small can of... be right back. Alright, so what I got here is deoxit D100. This stuff, it is designed in situations where a precise placement is necessary. Now, in full disclosure, they did send me this can for free. Like 4 years ago. But still going strong. We're just going to put a little bit of that in there. Just why not? You know, it doesn't hurt. I should also... oh, I see what my fix was. Okay. I think what I'm going to do... We're going to pull this panel out. I'm going to get a good look at that connector and see what's up. I think there's something else going on there. Let's just go ahead and remove it. Let me zoom out here. So let's remove this panel and get a better look at it. The unfortunate thing is if the panel has to be replaced for any reason, I don't have a spare. I have a good LTE 5400 panel, which is a little bigger, higher resolution. But that's not going to work on a 5280. I have to swap out, I believe, the upper logic board on this to do that. So let's unplug the backlight. I also want to show you guys why the 5000 series has such a terrible backlight. You'll notice that there's only one connector like this on the entire display. That connector is, of course, your backlight fluorescent tube connector. So most good laptops, well, better ones, will have two backlight bulbs. This one only has the one. I think that for a display this size, so this is kind of like leftover technology from, well, let me explain. When they started making laptop panels larger than like 9 inches, or when they were smaller than 9 inches, I'm just throwing numbers out in the wind here, they only needed one backlight tube. Really, you only needed one. And when displays started getting larger, not all manufacturers decided that, gee, maybe that's not enough light for such a big screen. And Compaq is certainly one of them. So if you have a 5000 series and the display seems unusually dim, it's because Compaq cheaped out on you and, well, only put one backlight tube. Alright, so this little board here, oh, there's a ground strap on there, of course. This little board, oh yes, I hot snotted this sucker because it kept coming loose. Now it's all coming back to me. Yeah, this is the laptop that I had this problem with, and naturally I suck. So, I'm going to get this thing apart, and I'm going to do it in a way that's not going to harm anything. But what was happening was this board was coming loose, and I'm just going to gently prise it up. Hot glue is not very strong, so that's good. And it just presses on there. I got to come up with something a little better than what I used. So at first I'm thinking, oh, it's the connector. No, it's not the connector. It's something far greater than that. So we're just going to pull that board off however we can. I may have to source out a replacement panel though. If I cannot come up with a good fix for this that's reliable, then yeah, it's new panel time. There's still a little bit of glue that's holding it in. Let's pry that off. Work it off very slowly. Might even help to throw a heat gun on it. Get a little heat action. If I break it, I bought it. If I break it, I buy it. No, if I break it, I'll just try to get another panel. I mean, I guess, what else would you do, right? I thought for sure the hot glue would be a permanent fix, but I was wrong. It's coming. It's coming. Gotta make sure we don't break anything in the process. That's what you want to do. Alright, so I got the board in my hand here. See that little connector. This doesn't have any componentry on it. It's really not. It's not what you're thinking. It's not like an interposer on a modern LCD TV. We're gonna pull the rest of this glue off. Make sure we don't take any resistors with it. Oops, I think I did. I'm just kidding. No, I didn't. They're pretty well attached. We'll just take the glue off. This is what happens to hot glue when it gets old, folks. It just gets brittle. It doesn't really do the job anymore. Alright. But that, my friends, is why we're having a problem with this display. Sometimes it's worse than others. Sometimes it doesn't screw up for, you know, a couple minutes, and all of a sudden it just turns gray, and before you know it, the whole display is completely out. And I'm going to try to come up with a better solution. So let's do it. So here's our little board. Like I said, there's no componentry. It's just a connector board. That's all it does. It takes those two cables from the display input, and it not really sure what it does specifically, and all it's got, by the way, is a little foam pad to keep it secure. Why don't we go ahead and put some of this magic juice on the connector. You know, it couldn't hurt. Give this stuff a little bit of time to kind of cool off or warm up and evaporate all the solvents that might be in it. So I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes. We'll come back to it and see what happens. Okay, so we've got that all been soaking in contact cleaner. I don't suspect that there's anything loose here, so I'm not much of a concern there. There's a possibility that the board that it links up to could have a break too, so I wouldn't put that out of I wouldn't eliminate that just now. Alright. But when you put it in, when the display is assembled, there just isn't much holding that there. I mean, if the laptop is ever dropped or jarred suddenly, it could potentially break off. Not break off, but it'll fall off. What we're going to do is we're going to put some of these lovely IKEA, these are little foam pads used for hell did I just build? I built a couple of glass cabinets for my girlfriend for plants, and those little pads come mighty handily. The extra ones they give you. Anyway, we're going to put those on there. I'm going to plug in my video cable. I'm going to fire this guy up. And we're going to see once and for all what the hell, you know. Alright, well, I got everything all back together. Let's connect power and fire it up. Let's see what's going to happen. Alright, let's turn it on. Let's see what happens. I'm going to turn this light off so I can better see it. Alright, so we have an image. And I'm going to flex this board a little bit. So far, so good. I think we fixed it, guys. You helped. Thank you. Now, that was the problem, and I think it's resolved. It's not flaking out. It's not doing anything weird. It's not a cable issue. Okay, I want to also make sure that this, I'm going to show you this one more thing you want to look out for. So this ferrite core right here, if it's too far up, it can put pressure on the board and cause it to dislodge when the thing is, when the display cover is assembled. But other than that, I got to get that driver. Anyway, but yeah, it's not flaking out. It's not doing anything weird. So I'm going to call that a success. That is the last thing I need to fix on this laptop for a while. Now we're going to reassemble everything. And yeah, I don't like the way this cable management is on this connector, because any amount of pressure on this cable is going to want to flex that board downward, which could potentially cause it to work loose from that connector. But I mean, there's not much I can do. While I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and retorque my display hinge screws. Just check everything for, yeah, these are good and tight. Now, this is another thing I want to point out. If you're working on your first vintage laptop, these are some, even a modern laptop, these are important things to consider. The hinge screws and any structural screws have to be torqued correctly. Now, I'm not saying you need to whip out a $70 screwdriver with a preset torque setting or what have you. What I mean is you want to make sure they're good and snug, because they tend to work loose over time. As these laptops get old, you know, these screws work loose. This is a high voltage area that I'm putting my screwdriver. Oh, that's another thing I should point out too. I keep forgetting that a lot of my viewers are younger and may not have worked on anything like this before. And not because you just don't see a lot of these in the wild these days. So a modern laptop uses LED backlighting. However, these old clunkers used fluorescent tubes. Like we talked about earlier in the video, there is a single, what's called a cold cathode, a CCFL tube, that runs the length or the width of the display. And that light is diffused by a layer of thin plastic sheets that are coated or textured a certain way to allow the light to evenly distribute around the display. I'm pretty sure you all understand that part of it. But in order for that light to illuminate, it does require a substantial amount of voltage. Now, I don't know what the voltage is on this, but I believe it's around 300 to 400 volts, and which could fry my multimeter. But there's some amperage backing it up, enough to shock you and hurt you pretty bad. It won't kill you, but it can hurt you. I've been shocked by one of these before. This is what you call an inverter board. That's the correct term for this. It is an inverter board. And its job is to take 12 volts and turn it into 400 volts, or whatever the voltage may be, and back it up with some nice amperage to give it some kick. So these do go bad. It's basically a ballast in one way or another. I believe it does function as a ballast as well. Of course, fluorescent tubes require ballasts to function, so that is what that does. And if my terminology is incorrect or I'm not explaining it right, go ahead and drop it down in the comments box. I am not a backlighting expert, but I do know that this is essentially miniaturized fluorescent backlighting at its finest. And like I was saying earlier, better quality laptops or more expensive ones had 2 fluorescent tubes, one on the top, one on the bottom. I do believe certain. I have seen laptops that had 2 backlight tubes. I've actually seen desktop fluorescent displays. Excuse me. I have seen desktop LCD monitors from the mid-2000s, before they switched to backlight, that had more than I think they had 4 tubes built in. So they would have had like 2 inverters and 4 tubes, top to bottom. So that, and in fact, my TV set, the TV that we have in this house is 12 years old and predates LED backlighting on television sets, and it probably has about 5 or 6 fluorescent tubes in it. That TV weighs about 400 pounds. I can't lift it, not by myself. All right. So getting this back together, you gotta get one side in all the way. Normally you would take this cover off. It would give you more clearance, but I'm a hack, so I don't do things right. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? So I think we solved our little we solved our image problem, and it seems to be running fine. So as I was saying, you want to make sure that these screws are torqued down, because if you don't, when you open and close the display, it's going to flex the it'll flex the mounting surface and the embedded threaded brass nuts in a way that could break them off. So by torquing them down, and on the way this display is built, these are structural screws. These supplement the screw that's on the inside that supports or that mounts the hinge to the rear panel cover, and they have to be good and tight. Otherwise, like I said, you're going to wind up with a very poor mechanical connection there, and it will snap. It will snap, but don't over tighten them. Use your best judgment, I guess is what I can say. Again, if you already know all this, this is information that is for the budding collector. Just a quick primer on working on some old laptops. Watch out for those high voltage display backlight inverters, because they'll bite you. Having been bit by one before, I know all too well. Now this screw, maybe I put the wrong screw in the wrong place or something. It's not threading in. Oh, there it goes. Again, you don't want to over tighten them when you don't want to go nuts. You just want them good and snug. That's all. That's all she wants. Just make it nice and snug. All right. I think that was fair enough. What do you? Get these little caps in there. So in terms of condition, this laptop is probably one of the best ones I own. Of all the vintage laptops I own, this one has aged very well. Now I own an IBM 760XL, which is one of IBM's premium laptops from the same time period as this one. Now the problem with the 760 and most of the IBM ThinkPads of the day is this is a big problem, because I'm finding that this material has made a comeback. Oh, by the way, when you reassemble the display, I didn't mention this, but when I started putting it all back together, you might have noticed that I brought the brightness control to the bottom. And I did that because when I reassemble this bezel, this slider is going to drop to the bottom during reassembly, which means that it's going to link up to the switch on the other side, the slider, without me having to fiddle with it too much. It's just a reflex, and I forgot to mention that, but it is important that you want to make sure that some of these displays have contrast and brightness controls. And what I do is before I put it back together, I bring the sliders all to the bottom. And then that way, as soon as I reassemble it, this is just going to fall into place, and it's going to control what it needs to control without any issues. So I'm going to flex the display a few times. I'm going to put some pressure on it. I know where the trouble spot is. And yeah, I think we're good. We fixed that issue. Couldn't be happier though. This laptop, again, like I said, it's one of the nicest ones I own from the mid 90s or late 90s. And it's a good example of it's a quality laptop. Compaq did make a few engineering blunders with this machine, and any of you folks who know these laptops as well or better than I do, you know what I'm talking about. One of the biggest problems is the status bar, which, funnily enough, I always thought was a really cool feature. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute. I've discussed this before, and other folks have gotten into this in the past, but I'm going to put these screwdrivers back and we'll talk about that. So what we have at the bottom, underneath the primary LCD, and this was kind of a fad. A lot of laptop manufacturers did this. IBM got into it with the 760 series. But this guy right here is a status board. Okay, this is what replaced the row of LED lights that used to be on somewhere around the keyboard area. But it displayed more information. Like, for example, if I mute the audio, if I press function F5, I can mute the audio and the speaker goes away. See? The little speaker icon goes away. It shows me the battery charge status, caps lock, num lock. I think I have to hit the function key to do that. I'm going to turn the num lock, scroll lock, and caps lock on. So it shows me all of those, status of those. It shows me if the laptop is suspended. Now check this out. On the Compaq LTE 5000 series, I just unplugged the power, we're now running on battery. Okay, I'm going to put it in suspend. Now watch this. This is kind of cool. Take notes. So it's in suspend. Power LED flashes. I thought there was a suspend icon here. I don't think there is. But if I pull the main battery out right now, like this, okay. So main battery. This machine is no longer getting power. Now this is also important. It's not hibernated. This laptop is not hibernating right now. Hibernating is where it writes the contents of RAM onto the hard drive on a special partition, and the laptop shuts down. It completely shuts down. And you notice I got no power going to this thing right now. Hibernating is not turned on. We're going to put power back to it. Then I'm going to press the suspend button. If I press the power button, it's going to initiate a shutdown immediately after it wakes up. Don't do that. Hit the suspend wake button. Here it comes. And look at that. It is completely like nothing ever happened. This is a feature that Compaq included on these laptops. What they did is they gave you a rechargeable, I forget the voltage. I think it's like a 6-volt battery or something like that. It's about that big. And that battery is powerful enough to keep the memory contents alive. In the instance of, let's say you're on a plane and you get to swap a battery, you're in a conference or whatever, and you don't want to shut down because you got a lot of stuff open. You press your suspend button, you pull the battery out, put a new battery in, press suspend again, and it wakes right back up again. That is a feature that unless you replace that faulty battery, inside will not work. If you find one of these in the dumpster or on eBay and you pay $1 million for it, unless it has that battery, which is mounted like this underneath under a little battery door, that is a feature that will not work as I demonstrated. So that's pretty cool. So you'll notice a little drain icon, like a faucet. Now this panel is actually in really good shape because most of these don't show half the icons anymore. Like you might have like a couple of these little battery icon or battery status cubes missing. Your the lock buttons or lock indicators may not work at all. Some of these are in really rough shape. These are very hard to find in working condition anywhere at any price. They really are impossible to find. And I've tried a couple of fixes to get one working again, and it was not successful, to put it bluntly. So I'm fortunate that I can demonstrate what these are supposed to look like. Now mine has a couple of icons out, I believe, that being there are 3 power modes, or battery saving modes, that these machines will run under. And you can switch them by pressing function F7. And 1, 2, 3. So there should be another icon showing up, and it's not. So on the laptops that do not have this display, it'll show up on screen with or without a driver installed. It's just a hard-coded thing. It'll just do it. But if I adjust power properties, I have allow Windows to manage it, but yeah, I'm powered by batteries. Let's see, when powered by AC power, just leave it on. Actually, I think I'll leave it at like maybe 30 minutes or so. 3 minutes? I can't do 30. What's the maximum it'll let me do? Oh. Okay, fine. Be that way. Powered by batteries, I want the power drive to shut off after about 10 minutes. That's fine. So when I did my battery power test, I got about 2 hours out of this. 2 hours and 41 minutes. That's running in a DOS environment with no software running in the background other than the battery calibration tool. So at this point, I would expect with Windows 95 running, we're actually using a little bit of stuff, this thing might go about 2 hours. The first year or so, maybe. As the battery gets older, of course, that number will drop precipitously. So that's a fact of life. Anyway. So that's all I really have to show you for today. Again, this is I tried swapping the drive out. That was a success, but ultimately I would rather stick with a FAT30. If I'm going to go with a 6 gig drive, my plan would be to go with FAT32, keep it one big partition, make it a little easier to manage. And I think what I will do is maybe find a machine that I have in my pile, like maybe put the drive into that desktop PC right there. And what I'll do is I'll just strip out all the drivers when I'm done. So that way I can do a clean install of Windows 95B. What version is on this? I think it's 95A that's on this thing right now. Let's find out. It is version B. Okay, good. So it is the correct version. Oh yeah, this one also has the maximum of 80 megabytes of RAM. That is what these topped out at, 80 megs, which is pretty good for one of these machines. Yeah, I got some smudge on the display there. I gotta clean that off. Well, anyway, I think we're ready to go. I am about ready to bring this thing to a public place and just see what kind of weird looks I get from people. I don't know why, but I find that oddly exciting. People are going to see that thing and like, what the hell? Why is your laptop so thick? Compare this to an IBM 760 XL. It is actually pretty thin. The 760, I believe, is a little bit thicker. So, there's that. But anyway, thank you all for your support. Thank you for watching. And if you've got an LTE 5000 series, I highly suggest you go on Facebook and search for the group. Compaq LTE 5000. It's Compaq LTE and Armada owners. It is a nice group of folks who all seem to support each other, have given me some advice. I've given them some, hopefully I've given them some useful information. So there you go. Have a great day.